Good day, everybody. Good day in whatever time zone you are in, whatever part of the world. Hopefully more of you guys will join us as we get started. But just wanted to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you. We haven't done a Facebook Live in Single Parents Who Travel for a while. The last series that we had, fortunately, we had pandemic on everything from, how to stay safe in COVID to how to make sure that you have the resources that you need to homeschool your kid, even though homeschool is not really homeschool per se, it's more like virtual learning. We had one about, how to operate, with a co-parent, if you guys are trying your best to travel with your kid or not. We did a whole lot of Facebook Lives, and then we kind of went dark for a while, but hopefully this is the beginning of a new series. Now that so many of us are back out in the world and doing our thing, to include dating. And some of us we're not even dating anymore. We're hardcore married. Like we've got a great group of panelists on today. Who either have been single parents at some point or single parents now and have been exploring, how to live their best lives as it relates to dating and partnership and, all the things as it relates to love. And so I just wanted to kind of start things off by doing a quick round robin of the panelists today. I'll let everyone introduce themselves. I will go very briefly. My name is Tamika Anderson. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I started pandemic single and I ended pandemic engaged. Looking forward to getting married this coming spring. It's been a very fun ride for me, but as you guys, some of you who have been on previous Facebook Lives specific to dating, I was talking about, how to do this thing, how to figure it out, especially as a single parent. Limited time, not a ton of resources all the time, like spending time away from my son. What does it look like to find your person as a single parent with all the unique challenges and opportunities that come with being a single parent? So I'll just kind of pass the mic now. Maybe we'll just go round robin to you next, DeAndre, and then we can go with Ami.
All right, cool. I am DeAndre Etherly. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm an entrepreneur, so I own my own business, but then I also work part-time at the airline, which gives me that freedom to travel. I have two amazing kids. I have a 6-year-old son. I have a 16-year-old daughter. And so obviously, like many of you, we love to travel. And so then when you kind of combine entrepreneurship and jobs and then kids, and then now you want to have a person in your life, it can become challenging. So I am on the journey. I have not arrived. But I'm excited. I've had some struggles. I've had some triumphs. And I think as all of us, we're still kind of trying to navigate this thing, but I'm happy. And I think there's some things that are working. There's some formulas that are working for me.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Ami Kamara, and I live in Texas, Southeast Texas, and I started the pandemic very single. My son was 18 at the time, senior in high school. I'd been a single parent since he was 9 months old, and I divorced his dad. So now I'm very married. I have two stepdaughters, twin stepdaughters that are 10. And so it's for somebody who swore they would never get married again and never do all the things again. Here I am.
That's awesome. And Sabrina.
Hello, my name is Sabrina. I currently live in Kenya with my husband and our two daughters. I have been a single parent since my daughter was born. I chose to have it that way, and I just wanted it to be me and her. So for 8 years, I've been a single parent, and then I met my husband on Facebook, people you may know, and we did the long distance thing for about 1.5 years. And then we flew here to Kenya, and we've been living here ever since. We have another daughter who is 9 years old, and that's actually technically his niece, but we've adopted her into our family. We've got her a passport. We're a family of 4, and we wouldn't have it any other way. They're pretty much like twins. They share a room, they do everything together, they share chores. Like, it's working out very well.
That's awesome. So a thread of connectivity for all of us is either, so most is like, we're not new to this, we're true to this. Most of us were single parents or have been single parents now for like a decade, somewhere around there. Like we've been the ins and the outs of dating. Like what have been some of the biggest challenges to single parent dating for each of you individually? And how did you approach dating, when you decided, to Ami's point, I thought I wasn't going to do this again, but maybe I should. And let's just start with you, Ami. Like, how did you even approach it? What were the challenges to getting to where you are now?
Okay, so to be totally honest, since I tell people all the time, the pandemic, because it was the pandemic, I couldn't catch flights, so I ended up catching feelings. And that's really what happened. Honest to goodness, I joined Facebook dating because I was bored. And I had been stuck at the house, like, things were just starting to open back up. It was like September 2020. And so I had been stuck at the house. I hadn't been going anywhere, doing anything. My son had finished out his senior year at home. So, all the things had happened and I was bored. And honestly, I had like 3 dates lined up that day and he was one of them. And I told him, I'm like, well, you told me you were going to take me to like the new restaurant in town that I hadn't been to yet, but had heard good things about. And so that's why I said yes. Like I wanted a free meal. That's what I tell him all the time. I'm like, I really just wanted a free meal. And I ended up with the whole family. But yeah, I just really was kind of like, and we met for lunch and it turned into a 3-hour lunch. I actually had 2 lunches back to back. I had him and then there was somebody else I had scheduled another lunch with. And I like texted that guy in the middle of our lunch and I was like, oh, my boss made me stay late at work. I can't meet you. So.
How long have you guys been together?
2 years. 2 years.
And yep. Was he a single parent also? Did I miss that?
Yes. So he has the girls live with us, and so twin daughters. They were 8 at the time. So
was he looking for love? Was he looking for a wife? Like, what was his?
I think he was looking for a fun time too. It's kind of funny because both of us were very I remember 2-3 weeks in, I was like, I don't know what you're expecting here, but don't expect me to get married. I don't want that. I was like, I'm just here to have fun. We'll have fun. Somebody to do some stuff with. You can take me out to eat, take me to the movies, whatever, take a little weekend trip or something, but that's it. That's it. And he's like, good. That's all I want too. So I think we shocked everybody around us.
I love it. I feel like this story is going to give hope to people who are like not out there like dating with a purpose, with an intention, or they're only looking to date people with an intention. But you could just happen upon your person with 0 intentions and be totally happy. So I feel like
absolutely
that audience right there. DeAndre, talk about. So she talked about meeting her partner on Facebook. Sounds like there might be a little similarities, or at least in terms of your journey. I don't know. Tell us.
Yeah. So my biggest challenge, a lot of times, is just time, and finding the time to go out there and date, because we all know, like, really when you're dating, sometimes it can be a full-time job also, right? If you're intentional about what you're trying to do. And so I think the biggest challenge that I've had is time. And so because I'm a person that doesn't like really go out and do a lot of social events, I've found that online dating is probably where my home is when it comes to finding someone. So the last few relationships that I've been in have been the online dating experience. And so that in and of itself presents a lot of challenges, like the facade that comes on at the beginning, and then like, how do you navigate this space and feel like something is authentic? And, shoot, now you open up the world of catfishing and all kind of stuff happens, right? So I think online dating has its own share of challenges. I think personally, I've just kind of learned to go with the flow, set proper expectations at the onset, and just hope that you guys end up in sync. Like, I love Ami's story, how like they both had, a thought in their mind of how they were going to approach the relationship, and then it changes. And I think we're all looking for that. We're all looking for somebody to change our mind. So that's a great thing. But that's just kind of my challenge of how I approach it. It's just, I'm open, I'm free. I like things to happen organically. I don't like a whole lot of expectation of from me or from that person. Let's get to know each other. I'm not in a relationship right now, but I'm actively dating. And so the person that I found that I'm dating is came from this group. So that was interesting in and of itself too. So I think you just got to try new stuff, put yourself out there and go with it.
Awesome. I love that. There's so many parallels I feel like that we can all kind of relate to. Time definitely being one of them. Goodness gracious. Time being super tight. And then also to your point about like, you want what you want, but you've got to create the time. You also have to be hopeful that the person shows up honest, and wanting to connect in a real way and not stay their facade. And, all the things that I don't know about you guys, but time plus desire for real. That's all we really, really want. You know what I mean? So I feel you on that for sure. And Sabrina, what did you find your biggest challenges to be? And, kind of how did you navigate getting from where you were to where you are now?
So I was completely content with just me and my daughter. I would have dating situations happen, and my daughter was during this time 6 or younger, so it was kind of just oh, this is my friend, right? So I introduced her to almost everybody because we're constantly in new environments. So I had friends that were girls, friends that were boys. It wasn't really a big deal. But around the 2-week mark, I would be what am I doing really? Am I going to be here that long? You seem like you're really settled in where you come from, and I am not a settled person, So it was always unintentionally at the 2-week mark, I would be I don't know, what are we doing? I'm moving soon, and just distance myself, right? So then I was just one day, and it was around the pandemic, we started talking December 2020. And he was on people you may know on Facebook, and he has vitiligo, and I'm really interested in different disabilities along those lines. And so his pattern of vitiligo just struck me so much, and I was just okay, and so I added him. I told my best friend, I was this is the person I'm gonna marry, girl, half joking, half not, right? And so then he posted a picture of him and his friend, and I commented on it and said you're gorgeous or something along those lines. And he was taken back by it, because in Kenya, vitiligo is not taken very well. So then we just started talking from there. And I think the difference was that distance was good for my daughter, because she was starting to get to that age where she knew the difference between a friend and a more than friend. And so she was kind of every time I would start talking to somebody, she would be distant, she why are you getting close to my mom, that type of thing. And so having that distance and being in a long distance relationship for 1.5 years, that gave her the time and me the time to explain it to her, and we're going to be a family, and get used to that idea before we came to Kenya. And that made it a smoother transition, I guess. Not to mention that when we first started talking and he said that he was from Kenya, I had watched a documentary about a white lady who had horrible things happen to her in Kenya. And I was oh, that's cool. We could be friends, but Kenya's on my do not go list. and now I live in Kenya. So things change.
Things change in huge ways on levels. I love, again, the point of connectivity. You were just minding your business, Facebook friend, people you may know pop up. Yeah, Kenya's not of interest. Now Kenya's home, but also the points that you're making too about being happy and content, with your daughter, and then deciding for yourself that you can do a shift, and helping her kind of work through that shift as well. And then it being what it is now in terms of,
I think that that's best, to not like, I know that dating, sometimes you go into it and you're like, I want to date somebody, I want to marry somebody, you know, but I think when it happens organically, that's like the best thing. Like when you're not like actively seeking somebody, because then you might settle. But when you're just like happy and content with your life and your children, and it just like falls in your lap, you know, I think that's like the best way.
So I'm going to blow that up real quick because I was intentional and I was on apps for a while and was very intentional about I want to be married. In fact, so intentional that I told my fiance on our first date. Basically, there's 4 things that I wanted to be able to make sure that we were on the same page about. One is I wanted to be married. The second is I didn't want to live in the United States exclusively for the rest of my life. The third is that I wasn't interested in moving because my son's in a great magnet school. He'll be there until almost high school. It really works out financially for me, as well as like he lives 2 stoplights away from his grandparents who are very like involved in his life. And that's the 4th thing is I want someone who's no stranger to therapy, because what I know as people of color, people overall, is that we can all use so it's an objective party who's helping us be our best selves in terms of our lives. And so I laid all these things out on the first date with my partner, who, by the way, I was his first and last swipe on Bumble. He wasn't my first and last swipe. I tell you, I mean, I was swiping like, what is this? This is just, but I did stop swiping after I met him. But yeah, he wasn't necessarily looking for a spouse. He had already been married. He was divorced, and he wanted to find love, but he wasn't coming at it the way that I was. But for me, I have had what I really wanted was someone who was a lot like, to be honest, like my biggest hero, who is my dad. I adore my dad. We have an outstanding relationship. My dad is reliable. He is consistent. He is smart. He is hardworking. He's got integrity. He is a good dad. And just one of my closest friends now, and so because my parents have been married since 1974, I've been up close to what it looks like to have a marriage go the distance. And one of the things that I learned is it's so important to not just love your partner, but like your partner. You're going to be spending your whole life with someone, be with someone that you don't have reservations about, and I also had to get to a point, I think, of maturity where I understood what it is to be more patient. Parenting has definitely helped me with that.
Yes.
Be more deliberate about how I spend time, and what I pour my energy into. And I found someone who's a lot like my dad in some great ways, but also a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. And I knew on the very first date, and it wasn't because I didn't have options. And it wasn't because I was settling, because now I'm at a point in my life where settle for what? I'm not rushing to have any kids. I'm living my best life. Like I literally have all the things that I want and the things that I need. Having someone join me in that life is a bonus, not a necessity. So I felt positioned well to spend as long as time as I wanted to choose the right person. It just so happened that person showed up and showed out on the very first date. I mean, I was like you, Ami. Like in my hey, I had dudes lined up back to back. I would give 15-minute windows, 15 to 20-minute windows between dates. The servers would literally know to clear the other plate so another person could get here. I was a G with it. I was a straight G. I could be out in these streets dating the entire weekend, the entire week. I literally had, at some point, I had to be careful because I'm a project manager. So like I would do things like send calendar invitations to them, forgetting they don't need to know that. I'm trying to keep y'all organized for me. That's how many dudes there were. Okay. I had no problem. I literally have been on ABC Nightline, like doing round, what's it called when you're doing, I always forget the term, but how you sit down and somebody gets up in the next seat or whatever. Years ago, ABC Nightline did a profile on me. They came to my house in New York. I was living in Brooklyn. And they were talking about Black women and their like dateability, basically. because, you know, there's more Black women to Black men who are eligible, yada, yada, yada. And they wanted to kind of run an experiment on, you know, how dateable Black women are. Let me tell you, I went out with white men, European men, Asian men, Hispanic men. I killed it. I did not have a doubt about my dateability, which is another thing that made me feel like, okay, stay in this journey until you find your person. You know, and that's one thing I want to say to single parents, because especially over a certain age, because I feel like, you know, there's a way in which we can begin to get discouraged after a certain age, or a way in which we can just get discouraged. And that certainly was me too. You know, like the other side of going out on so many dates with different people is you could be like, dang, is it me? Nobody's hitting. I'm not finding this point of connectivity. When is this going to happen? I deleted and like added back on these apps so many times and was just like so discouraged at different points. You know, and that's why it was helpful to have like single parent community to be able to be like, all right, so you're doing this too. It's not just me. You know, we would be like, okay, we're having more success on Bumble than like X, Y, and Z. So, but I think the last thing I want to say before we switch to another sort of like question is, you know, specific to kids. And I know this is a topic I have seen brought up on like the threads that we had coming into this group is like, you know, when's it a good time to introduce kids? You know, when's a good time to kind of like help them start to acclimate to what life could look like with a partner? You know, for me, and I'll give this, I give credit to, I'm forgetting her name, but Emma, I'm forgetting, it'll come to me soon, but she's like millionaire matchmaker, not millionaire matchmaker, millionaire. I'll bring it up later, but she's another like single mom influencer basically, who she has a wealthy single mommy. She has a blog and she was like basically having conversation on that blog about just this topic. Like, what is it to like date as a single parent? What are your responsibilities with your kids? Yada, yada, yada. And something she said that was really smart that I felt like was, you know what? Introduce the kids when you're ready, you know, in whatever capacity you feel is fit. You don't necessarily have to introduce them when you feel like that's going to be your husband. You know, that may be something that you want to do, but you can also introduce them casually, more casually than that, just as people, when you feel like they've got good intentions, you feel like they're honest people, you can have them around, you know, like whenever you feel like it is appropriate. So that it doesn't necessarily have to become this huge deal if they don't work out, you know? It's like you're kind of showing your kids. For me, I didn't want to have like a turnstile amount of people coming in and out of my house, you know, literally and figuratively. You know, my son was exposed to just a handful of people on my journey because that was what I was comfortable with. And because my child asked a lot of questions, and I was like, I don't want to answer a whole lot of questions all the time about people who can end up being friends. And that's valid too. You know, it's cool for him to know that I have male friends who are good guys who are going to come over and like shovel the snow for us or going to help with the groceries or whatever. Like there's validity in having friends, legitimate friends, you know what I mean? But I say all this to say that the journey being the journey and allowing yourself grace and having the confidence that you can have the kind of conversations with your kids as you go to help them be comfortable is something that I learned as part of this journey myself. You know what I mean? So yeah, intentions, non-intentions. Going out to date just because you want to eat and end up with your partner. You know what I mean? Meeting people on Facebook, meeting people on apps. I don't think we have anybody who necessarily met their partner organically, but I'm sure that's also part of the conversation. And speaking of conversation, I'm just looking real quick to see if maybe anyone has chimed in on any of our threads, and it's totally fine if they don't. Sometimes later on, when the recordings come on, folks will ask questions. But I'm just wondering, in terms of, DeAndre, let's go to you real quick. In terms of like what you're looking for at this stage, what are you looking for? Like, I know you're dating and everything. Like, what would pique your interest? What would turn your head right now as it relates to a potential partner? Are you looking to be married? Like, this is your moment, dude. This group is
This is it, right? That's a lot of pressure. So I think if my answer has drastically changed, I think over the last 2 years. So before I was like, hey, I definitely want to be married. And I think I went on that whole journey where I was intentional about being married, and similar to what some other folks have said, like when you're focused on it too much, it probably doesn't happen. So I made a choice probably about a couple of years ago when I started my business too. It was great because I didn't have time, but I just said, you know what, I want to be married. That's a desire of mine, but I'm no longer setting out to be married, right? So now that I'm in the space that I'm in now, I'm just trying to get to know people. And I think over the people that I've dated, I've learned a lot about myself and where my growth opportunities are and where I'm very strong. And so I think I look at every interaction as really an opportunity to develop myself. Like, because in the reality, we date so many people, whether it's a full-on date or whether it's a swipe, right? So when we look at that whole number, 99% of the people that you interact with are probably going to be not the one, right? So then what did you get from that interaction? What did you get from that experience? And so that's what I try to focus on now when I date is how can I better myself? How can I get to know this person? How can I see kind of what I can gather from this person and learn from this person? And then if it ends up being more great, that's what I would love for to happen. But if it doesn't, cool. And to your point, I end up meeting a lot of people that become friends. So I think that's just what my goal is right now, is to meet people and see who they are and continue to personally grow.
Yeah. So one of the questions I definitely see, which has come up and got some likes, is at what point I know I spoke about my philosophy on introducing, potential partners or people that I've been dating to my son, but like, what does that look like for you? Like, what makes the most sense to you in terms of when you introduce your son and your daughter, and how, et cetera? What's your?
So that's interesting. So I'm one of the people, I only date women with children. It's just, I don't like to date women that don't have children. They don't get it sometimes. You know what I mean? They don't get the relationship with the other parent. They don't get the priority, all that good stuff. So because I date women with children, many times the first couple of interactions has been, hey, can we do something fun with the kids? So it's not something that's super, it's light, it's fun, and they're introduced already in a manner that they don't even see it coming, right? And that worked when my daughter was probably up until like 6 or 7. I think Sabrina's like, my daughter starts knowing the difference in types of relationships. So with my 6-year-old son, that'll work. But now with my daughter, I do have to be a little bit more intentional. She's 16, about conversation. She pays attention to a lot. A lot of times she'll come to me and be like, I see you've been on the phone. Like, what's up? Right. So I think in those spaces where it doesn't happen, where it's light, and I don't have to make a hard introduction, I have conversations with my daughter that are very real. Hey, listen, I like somebody right now. What do you think about that? She begins to ask her questions about that person, and we just kind of navigate that space together. And I don't think there's a certain time that I say, hey, this is exactly when this person has to meet this person or doesn't have to meet this person. And when I look in the past, the times that they've met have been something that just happened. I don't know, maybe we were at a family event and then that person, and I was like, hey, what do you think about inviting this person? I want you to meet, something like that. So I think when they're of age, keeping them a part of the discussion and the decision, I think is important. So.
I hear that. How about you guys? I mean, what was your journey like? I know, Sabrina, you kind of spoke to this a little bit, but like in terms of when you introduced, in what capacity you introduced your kids to potential partners, and for especially you two, because you're now married, what was the transitional period like, from going to being a single parent to, now co-parenting, it sounds like, for lack of a better word, with your new partner, if that makes sense?
I think it was like a harsh transition for me because we have the unique situation of moving across the world, so it wasn't just like, oh, let me introduce you to this person this day and just for a couple hours. No, it was like I had to prepare her for the fact that like okay, now I'm getting married. Like, because before that, like, I had unfortunately like drilled into her head, it's me and you against the world. It's me and you
I'm
against the
so
world, you know?
sorry.
So,
Am I
like,
the only one who's having some internet challenges? Oh, okay, gotcha. We're having a little bit of instability, so you're kind of cutting in and out. Let's try it again.
oh, okay. Yeah, so like unfortunately I had drilled her head, like, it's me and you against the world.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sabrina. We're still struggling. Perhaps, I don't know. Is there a way to maybe run a quick test? And Ami, did you want to take this in the meantime, just to see?
Sure.
What
Yeah. So I've been a single parent since my son was 9 months old. And I think in that time, of all the people I dated, he probably only met like 2 of them and had any sort of like relationship with them. A few times he would meet them, but it was like, oh, hey, that's just my friend. Or, you know, it wasn't like he figured out, oh, hey, they're dating, you know, or something like that. Only time it was like 2. And so with us, at this point, he was like 18 and just finished his senior year, but he still was living at home because he was attending the local university and living at home. And he's not a dorm kid. As much as I tried to get him in the dorm, he won't do it. But, you know, I think Joey came with me to a play because my son does theater. So he came with me to the play and I was like, oh, hey, this is my friend. My son's like, yeah, okay. I mean, you haven't been home in 2 nights, but okay. But now with the girls, it was a little different because they were younger. And I don't think we were planning on meeting them as soon as I did. But I was over here for Halloween and their mom dropped them by to say hi. And I was like, just sitting out there and this car drives up and these 2 little blonde girls come running out. And I went and hid behind the golf cart. Like, I was like, I don't want anybody to see me. I was like so freaked out. I mean, freaked out because even at that point, I still was kind of like, I don't know if I want to meet the kids. I don't know if I want the whole, you know, like I'm fine with things the way they are. We don't need to progress this any further. And so that, I mean, it was like, I felt like I'd been thrown under the bus. Like, it freaked me out. I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. I had to take a day to, I mean, like, you know, I mean, because it's a big deal. Knowing you're not just going to be in one person's life, but you're going to be in 3 people's lives. And so it was a big deal. But I think I met them more formally a couple weeks later. And until that point, we would just really see each other on the weekends where they would go to their moms. So like basically every other weekend when they would go to their moms, then I would basically come hang out for like the whole weekend or something like that. You know, we do like 5 dates in like 2 or 3 days because we knew that's all we were going to get for another week or something. So, but yeah, I don't think it was ideal for anybody, but it worked out for the best because they already had suspected because Dad was on his phone a lot, you know, and they had actually snuck through his phone and figured out who I was. And at the time I was managing a museum in town and they had been there in their preschool class. So they were like, oh, we know her. She gave us our tour. And it was like, okay. They looked me up on YouTube because I had some things out there. Like, I mean, they're like little detectives. And so they knew all about me, you know, and they were cool with it. They were like, I mean, they told him, they said, don't screw this up. So.
Sabrina, I think you're trying to talk, but I think maybe you're on mute.
Oh no, I was talking to my daughter.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
No, unfortunately, it's still staticky. I'm not sure. Maybe you want to drop and then I can add you back in if that's what you want to try. We'd love to be able to hear you.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Yep. Cool. So in the meantime, I'm going to just take a look at some of the questions. I saw there's a question that was asked of us previously. that people could use some tips or some suggestions on methods for vetting potential suitors, especially if meeting them via sites. Okay, for me, I met my partner on Bumble, and I had a process by which, over time, I learned to engage with people I was meeting online. The first thing I wanted to do, to DeAndre's points, is, basically get somebody off. I don't want to continually chat with you. Let's do a FaceTime or, some kind of video chat, because catfishing is real. And I just don't want, I'm like, what are we both doing here if we're not going to be able to meet up with our true, authentic selves, like right now? Everybody's in pandemic, but everybody has a smartphone just about, or a laptop that works with the camera. So let's have that conversation. That way I can at least remove the fact that I'm talking to somebody who's a complete, I can't connect a face to a name and a voice. That was one of my first steps. And then having an actual conversation with that person, whether doing that video chat or previously. I typically, when I was dating, it was about, getting off the app as soon as possible. Like, I literally had maybe a 3 exchange sort of limit, because there were just so many people all the time. I just weeded people out. Like if we've gone back and forth a bunch of times for weeks and you still haven't asked me out, then you're wasting my time and I'm wasting my time. So I would just want to move off of the app as soon as possible to have conversations, actual conversations. I'm better at talking than I am texting, despite the fact that I'm a writer. I can write all day, but my fingers get carpal tunnel, and I'm not getting to know you. So then it was like a meetup, and even in pandemic, I'm like, we could still, like like I said, my fiance and I, it was the dead of winter when we got together. We literally met up under 3 heat lamps. To me, that's an indicator of actually being interested in getting to know me. Are you going to come out to this cold restaurant and hang out? Cool. And then a lot of it's just chemistry then, right? It's like, okay, I've asked you some questions, some clearing questions over the phone or over video chat. And I asked the hard questions up front. I asked someone to smile. So, if they thought I was bold and nosy, congratulations on both. You should know that. Like, I want to know what I want to know. Like, I would ask things like, okay, cool. So you got kids? Like DeAndre, I really is mostly interested in dating a partner with kids. And especially like they have their kids, not like their kids are with their mom and they never see them. I wanted to know the nature of your relationship with your kids. Life happens, things happen, things aren't always perfect. There's definitely room for that. But like the fact that you're trying to show up as an active, not trying to show up, you are showing up as an active present father was a priority for me. So I asked questions to kind of get to know that. I also wanted to know a little bit about like, all right, so are things cool with your child's parent or children's parent? You know what I mean? Don't need to know all the details. I'm not doing that, but like these are all things that factor in to like when I see you, how I see you, how things are with your life, how things are with your kids. Those are the things I wanted to know about. Are you in a relationship with somebody else? That's really simple. I was single as a dollar bill and able to be transparent about that. There was nothing holding me back. I wanted to make sure to the best of my ability that the person I was standing in front of was in the same situation, like be honest. And you can kind of tell, like, I feel like, I've been interviewing people for 20 years. You can't look at me in my eye, you look down, you do this whole thing. That means maybe you're just not ready for what I'm looking for. So now none of that speaks to whether or not people can lie to you, right? I feel like maybe that's at the heart of this question about dating people online. And, I'm fortunate that I have lawyers, I've got other law enforcement in my back pockets, my bridesmaids even, they can run a check. I'll at least know if I'm serious about you, that I don't have to worry, because at least from a what's in the system standpoint, you ain't got no warrants. There's no previous cases that are serious, or for me, I wanted to know just some of those basics, right? Especially before we really integrated our kids. My main objective, is to make sure that my kid's safe. So I feel no ways about doing my due diligence when things kind of get to that point around looking and seeing what's available to me. And I think the last part of this is being able to trust your intuition. You know, I think that has been a huge thing for me over the years, period, not just in terms of dating, but it's in general. Like, do I feel like this person is coming to me honestly? You know, I've certainly been in situations where I was like, oh, in retrospect, maybe he was showing me he wasn't serious, or maybe he was showing me he wasn't who he was. And lessons learned helped me show up differently, and just kind of like keep things in my back pocket, maybe not get so excited until I feel like I've spent enough time with you for you to demonstrate that you're consistent in what you say and what you do. So that was my way. That has been my way of sort of vetting potential partners, whether I met them in real life or whether I met them online. And maybe one of the three of you guys want to take a stab at that as well, since safety is a big concern of ours as single parents.
Yeah, with my husband, like, it was a lot more difficult than like looking things up in the system, because he's from Kenya. You know, you can't just look things up in the system. But I don't know, I think I did like little tests, like asking him questions. Just, we would play like the question game, you know, like, because we were just messaging or video chatting, and that's all we had. So we would just ask each other random questions like 24/7, because the time difference and stuff, like whenever you woke up, whenever you got to the phone, and just certain ways that he would answer questions, like, kind of told me like, oh, like, you wouldn't have said that unless it was true, you know, kind of thing. Like, you don't want just anybody knowing that information about you, or having a message that says that about you, you know. So that kind of stuff, like, slowly but surely made me really trust him before even meeting him, because it was just like, okay, like, each step is getting me like closer and closer. And we did this through like a 1.5 year time span. So it wasn't like, oh, we're falling into this quick, which is usually how I did things. So I liked the really slow pace, like you said, like being really hesitant and making sure like this is the right thing, let's move slow. And that really worked for me.
Either one of you have any ways in which you it?
I do. So I kind of was like you. I worked at the fire department, and so I got some of them to do some background checks on, and this would happen when I would start dating somebody. I would be like, hey, can you do a little background check for me? You sometimes you just have to. Now where we live, it's a large sort of area, but it's like everybody kind of seems to know everybody else somehow. And so I worked with a bunch of guys that I knew wouldn't steer me wrong. And I just started asking around who knew him, because it was weird. We had no friends in common. And it's very unusual for me to find somebody in this area when I meet them on Facebook or something that I don't at least have 1 or 2 friends in common. And we had none. And, so that was one thing for me. And I did have a few parameters. I was a little hesitant about where he lived because of some issues I had with guys that had messaged me from this area that had maybe a Black woman fetish. And so that did make me a little hesitant. But I did a lot of nosing around, a lot of asking around, a lot of figuring out who he knew and who knew him. And everything I got back was good. And I will say one thing that did work in his favor was that he had his kids full time. And so just off the back of my head, I was like, okay, he's got to be a fairly good person if that's the case, So, but I think that, just a lot of digging around, and same as with you, like I had done a lot of dating, and at some point you figure out who's lying to you and who's not, and who's just trying for whatever they're trying for, and there were guys that were like, first date, they're like, hey, you want to come over and I'll make you a salad for lunch? And I'm like, I don't know you and I don't want to die. So no, I don't want to come over. And I mean, a guy asked me to his house in a hurricane, and I was like, I will get stuck out there and no one will know where I am and I'll die. So, yeah, I think it's really just experience kind of, and you have to listen to your intuition. It may not always be right, but I think when something's definitely wrong, if you don't ignore the signs, usually you can feel, at least with me, I can feel when something's wrong.
Yep, totally hear you. And I feel like that's a very good segue into, things that are right? The things that we feel are like on the money. And it's interesting. And it's also heartwarming that my son wanted to join this conversation just for a minute, because he was interested in sharing from a child's perspective, what it was, his experience was like. So I'm just going to bring him on really quickly. It's my son, Solomon. Come over here. I'm going to ask him a couple of questions because it's what we do. So this is Solomon, right? And he's my only son. And I told him I would ask him a couple of questions about his experience in terms of gaining me getting married and you gaining your dad.
Mm-hmm.
How excited, on a scale of 1 to 5, how excited are you about that?
A 5.
You're 5. And if you could describe Mike, how would you describe him? What would you say that you like?
Well, he's definitely straightforward.
He's straightforward, like mom. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that he does with you?
Well, recently, I guess in the last month, we went to like a fair.
Mm-hmm. County fair together.
Mm-hmm.
And does he help you with your math homework?
Yeah, he does.
Does he come to scout meetings?
Yep.
Does he take you to church?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does he take you out to eat?
Mm-hmm.
Take you to Baltimore Ravens games and watch your own jersey and stuff?
Mm-hmm. That was only once, but
Yeah, but he learned that you wanted to do it, and so he made sure that you were able to, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was it like when I was going on dates? Was it kind of like weird that mom was getting dressed up and going out on a Friday night, or did you just kind of like, you're like, he doesn't remember? That's cool. That's cool. But are you excited about our family getting bigger?
Mm-hmm.
Excited about being able to have brothers and sisters as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so cool. So would you say this has been a success?
Yeah.
Single parent dating has been a success?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thank you for sharing your comments on screen for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know, we're gonna leave soon. Okay, cool. All right. So I just thought I'd give you guys a little bit of a taste of, from the kids themselves, their experience. And I'm sure that each of your kids could probably say something too. I mean, it's like, our kids want to see us happy. We're parents, but we're also full human beings, who, in addition to them, are capable of having relationships that are not only great for us, but enhance their lives as well. So I'm curious. Obviously, I didn't share with you that I was going to bring Solomon on, but like, what are some of the things that your kids have said, in terms of your experience in dating and where you're at now versus where you are, where you've been? What's some of the feedback you've gotten?
Going back to the question that I wasn't able to answer, it kind of relates to this as well. It was a harsh transition because I had always told my daughter it's me and her against the world, and that I told her that her whole life. And so then I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I'm getting married and now we're going to have a family. It's kind of like 8 years of like telling somebody something and now you're telling them the opposite. So I'm glad that we had that long distance relationship to get her used to things. But even coming to Kenya, like you could see the anxiety in her, like she was like, well, I'm not going to give him a hug when we first get there. And I was like, you've given my friends that you've never met before hugs. So like, are you just testing the waters to see like what's okay, And so it was a struggle for the first like few months when we lived in the village. And then when our other daughter came to live with us, like she's used to being in the house. We lived in Ohio with like all the snow and stuff. And here in Kenya, the kids go outside all day. You know, you come in for lunch, you come in for dinner, that's about it, you know? So it was really a transition. She would want to come in and play with her doll. She would want to come in and read a book, you know, and I was like, go outside, Safari, like play with the kids, you know? So she would go out there and talk to them in English and they're just like staring at her, you know? So it was like something to definitely get used to. Then we moved to Nairobi and it was kind of like we were all new. So my Kenyan daughter, she was new here, you know, because she never lived in Nairobi before. And then my American daughter was new here too. So it's kind of like we got a fresh start here. And then you started seeing the change, like, Mom, can I go outside? Mom, can we go outside and play? You know, and it was like, oh, okay, like you're getting comfortable here, you know, like getting friends in Nairobi, more kids speak English. So that was like a transition, you know, and then like, now it's like, you can't separate us. Like we do everything together. Like, so, and then my husband went to go vote. It was voting like a couple months ago. And so he had to go back to the village and they were like, I yelled at them for something. And my American daughter was like, I can't wait until Shaha gets back. He's such a good parent, you know? And I was like, okay, well, at least we're at that point where she like wants him, you know? So yeah, it's definitely been a harsh transition. I don't know that I would like recommend exactly how I did. I was probably like more harsh on her than I needed to be, but at the end of the day, like the result is really good. And I think that like our blended family of 4 with all different dynamics has worked really well.
That's excellent. Thank you. I'm glad your internet is like working with us because that was a really good and important conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How about you, Ami?
So it was definitely an adjustment, and I will say, and he'll say this all the time, so it's not like me just like, but he's like, they love you more than they love me. And I'm like, no, they love you too. It's just now they have this girl that will sit here and paint their toenails and take them shopping and not be a dad, like be a man, like that looks fine. Let's just go. You know, it's like, you know, I'll help you pick out your outfit. So I said, you know, that's not it. But, you know, and with my son, he was a teenager. So, and he's a man of little words. And I do know, you know, it's been an adjustment for him too, because like he's, you know, we're all living together in the same house now. And he's gone from it being just him and his mom for 20 years. And now he's got, I mean, 2 little sisters and, you know, we're all living together. So it's been an adjustment, but luckily, all 3 of our kids are very like easygoing in that department. And so there's not like any unnecessary like drama or they touched my stuff. And, you know, it's just everybody's kind of chill. And I mean, the girls are always volunteering Isaac to help for stuff for, oh, he's a filmmaker because he's in film classes. He can film our Girl Scout videos for us. You know, I mean, they've got stuff all planned out. They'll plan out everybody's life in this house. So including his. So it definitely was an adjustment, I think, for everybody, but it's worked out well. And I think we all just really like, everybody seems to get along really well. And I mean, even the dogs are like best friends. So it really has worked out well. I always thought before when I was dating, I didn't think I could ever live with somebody else again. I had tried that, didn't work, right, with my ex-husband. And I don't think I can do that again. And I definitely don't think, you know, with having a kid, I can bring a kid into that, you know, no matter the age. And but it's worked out well. It really has.
I love it. And I know we just have a few more minutes, and I apologize. I didn't see all of the comments that were showing up until now. Thank you, Diana, for making sure that I see some folks that are online. Number 1, thank you so much for joining us. And number 2, I'm looking in the feed. If there are any sort of final questions that you want to ask, feel free to go ahead and chime in. But I'll add to this conversation point also, meaning it's all a transition. You're right. You know, like over the next 6 months or so, my fiance and I will be living together, and it'll be a different day. He has 4 kids from a previous marriage. I'm getting to know some of them. You know, they're all older, you know, so it's like, it's a different way to like sort of engage with kids when they're older, when they're teens or they're young adults, you know, because they're not living in a household with you. So you have to do your best to like create the opportunities in the midst of all the stuff they've got going on to try to connect with them. And sometimes it could be hit or miss. It has nothing to do with you. It's just that they're busy trying to figure out life. You know, they've got their own other set of priorities, and then you just kind of like get in where you fit in. And that's something that I'm learning to do. And then there's the smaller kids that are in the home that, you know, you're actively working with every single day and taking care of and everything. And you've got to find a new rhythm with your partner who comes from life outside of you guys, you know, and is learning personalities and learning temperaments and learning, you know, like how to coexist in the same home, you know what I mean? And in this case, it's a home that we've lived in exclusive from him. So it's just like, how do we then integrate households, making it comfortable for everyone? These are all the things that I'm going to figure out. We're going to figure out together in the coming months. But it's good to have a good foundation. And it's good, I think one of the smarter things that I have taken away from others before me is to be intentional about creating opportunities for your kids to bond with the other person, the person that you're marrying or you're dating. You know, Mike is really great about, you know, like saying, I'm going to take him here. I'm going to spend this time with him here. I suck at math. You know, Mike was a math major. I'm like, perfect. Saw you, Doug, right there, everything. So anyways, we're coming to the end of this. Any sort of burning last comments that any of you want to give, especially pieces of advice to people who are on this journey, who maybe want to get married, maybe they just want to find their forever person and they don't want to necessarily get married. Like, if there's any piece of advice that you could give to folks who are looking for love as a single parent, what would you give? And let's just start with Sabrina. We'll have you go first to go last.
I just wanted to agree with you on making sure you have those opportunities for that other parent to be involved. You know, like, I think for single parents, it's really hard to let somebody else do those things, you know, because we've done it all for so long, you know, like it was hard for me to be like, okay, you can do that, you know. I'm like, I've done it all. Like, I don't need you. I want you. I don't need you, you know, like, so like that transition was really hard. So along the lines of like the subjects, we homeschool both of our daughters. So like, they definitely have like different strengths and weaknesses, you know, like based on their upbringings. And me and my husband have different strengths and weaknesses as well. So he's really good with like, here, one of the subjects is like the Bible, like Christian, like studies and all of that. And so he's really good on that front, you know, and then he's really good with environmental and what else does he teach? Oh, Swahili. They learn English and Swahili, which is the language here. So he takes on those roles, and then I take on English, math, and social studies, you know. So we determine what each other is good at, you know, like I make most of the meals, but then he'll like come in like every other day, every 3 days, and he'll make like a traditional Kenyan meal, you know, like for all of us to eat. So I really think that like nobody's perfect, but we're trying really hard to like blend the different cultures, the different backgrounds together, you know, as opposed to one kind of being the dominant, you know, like we're trying to make sure that everybody's background and culture is in this family, you know, like both of them call like their grandmas, you know, like one grandma doesn't speak English, one grandma doesn't speak Swahili, you know, so like they talk to each grandma, you know, like the grandma that doesn't speak English, like she can get as far as I'm fine, like I'm tired, how are you, you know, like, and it's really cute to see them engage with like these different cultures of grandmas that like are in different places. So I just think like communication and making sure that you like draw on each other's strengths is going to make the relationship flourish.
That's amazing. That's great advice. What about you, DeAndre?
Myself there. So I think when we talk about kind of like a piece of advice that I would give, I think it's just kind of to open your mind. It's easy on the single parent journey to bring this point. A lot of our points, like we're used to doing things a certain way, and especially with dating, as soon as we see something, it's an instant red flag. We're out, right? So I think opening your mind that your present doesn't have to be reflective of your past, and just because a situation may look a certain way, delve a little bit deeper before you totally eliminate it. So just approaching situations differently, because the reality is, like, for those of us that are still on the single, like whatever we've done up to this point probably hadn't worked, right? So maybe we should be open to trying something different. Maybe things that you used to be dead set on not doing, try something else, putting yourself out there a different way that maybe is a little bit more uncomfortable. So I think just opening yourself to different ways of doing things in this journey, I think, is the best advice that I can give.
Also, excellent advice. Thank you for that, DeAndre. Ami?
I would just say to just, if it feels right, like don't hold yourself back. I know there's lots of times where I was like self-sabotage in other relationships, and I'm a big advocate for therapy and finding out why you do things the way you do them. And I just, this time, even though it was scary, and I think it was scary for both of us because neither one of us was looking for this, it was something where it felt right, and it felt more right than any other relationship we had ever been in. And so we didn't hesitate. Yes, it was scary, and we both had come to Jesus moments with each other where we're like, I don't know. But when it feels right, it's, don't hesitate, because you could end up ruining it for yourself.
Yeah, that's excellent. I've got a couple of pieces of advice. Advice that I gave myself during this journey. I think sometimes as single parents, we don't always give ourselves permission to live our lives in full as people, in addition to being parents. I feel like sometimes, especially, there's a lot of pressure on moms to hold back from dating, not to see someone, et cetera, et cetera. What example are you setting for your kids, et cetera, et cetera? I feel like, don't listen to that. One part of my journey has been me being my happiest, wholest self allows me to bring my happiest, wholest self to parenting. And that means allowing myself to have a partner and to take it to as far as I'd like to. I think another piece of advice I would give is, something I already said before, which is trust your intuition, but also do your background checks if need be. It's good to have a second set of eyes. And also, this goes without saying, but at the same time, I feel like it needs to be said. Focus on having fun. This doesn't have to be like, oh, it's terrible. Actually have a good time. I have come out of these, conversations sometimes with friends, with potential business opportunities. It didn't have to go where I thought it would need it to go. It just kind of was. Have a good time. It can be a fun time. Someone asked a question about, how it is that and I know we're going over a few minutes, so I appreciate you guys for staying on for just a few minutes more. Someone asked a question earlier about like, how do you figure out how to create the time? How do you create the time to date? Maybe just say to yourself, I'm going to give myself 2 weekends out of a month, like the reserves, where I'm going to like create space to go on dates. My son or daughter or kids, I'll have a sitter for them. It's kind of like you just create a space and you feel like that space will actually be used for a good date with someone. That's what I did. I would just say, my son goes to bed at 8:30 at night. I'll have a couple conversations with folks that I met online. Then if it transitions to a date, I already have that time set aside for the weekend and the money set aside for the weekend to go out on dates and enjoy myself. And if it goes someplace cool, if it doesn't, cool. And the last piece of advice I would probably give is like having therapy has been a really good tool for me, just in terms, or a coach of some kind, or friends that you trust to be able to like bounce conversations off of about people that you've met, just like to give you encouragement on this journey, especially for those of us who wanted to find their person and wanted to get married, because it can be a longer haul situation. It can kind of over time become just frustrating. It's just helpful to be able to like talk to people who have been where you're at, or maybe are where you're at, but who are like approaching this from a positive place, so that you keep your sanity. You got like someone to bounce things off of that you're going through, and then you're well equipped emotionally to go through this journey. I know there's ups and downs. Disappointments abound sometimes, especially when you really want something, So being able to stay the course, even when you're meeting crazy people or connecting to them, or they say things that are weird and off-putting to you online, which you could take personally, but you need to not take personally. I feel like some of those emotional shoring up is very helpful on this journey to single parenting. So that's all I wanted to add. And with that, I really want to say thank you so much, single and married parents, for giving up this small slice of time on your precious holiday weekend for us in the US, and on a Sunday at that. Football's coming on. Thank you. You guys are appreciated. I'm saying thank you also for the folks who are watching, for watching us. And we look forward to having the next Single Parents Who Travel Facebook Live in the future as well. And we'll keep an eye out for comments and answer questions as you post them as they come up. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you, panelists. Really appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.